Hey, folks. Before we get to the episode, I want to invite you to this month's International Directors Meetup, our monthly gathering of directors and theater makers from around the world. It's a space to share experiences, trade advice, and find support in what can often be a pretty isolating role. You can come and go as you need, drop in late, leave early, whatever fits your schedule. It's simply a chance to set aside time each month to sit alongside others who understand the work. For dates, times, and details, head to boardofdirectors.world and pull up a chair at the table. Join the board. The first piece of theater I ever saw when I landed in Singapore was Alvin Tan's work. It was at the M1 Fringe Festival, a production called Can Change. There's a moment of the show where two men kiss, and I remember feeling the air in the room shift. The audience was visibly startled. I was brand new to Singapore, still learning the cultural landscape, and I didn't yet know about the censorship structures or that homosexuality was still criminalized. What stayed with me wasn't just the moment itself, but what happened afterward. In the post-show talkback, a lot of the questions circled that kiss, and Alvin calmly explained that in Singapore, you submit scripts for censorship, not staging. I remember sitting there thinking, this is someone who understands the system so deeply that he knows exactly how to push against it. It felt smart, precise, and quietly radical. That moment is why I sought Alvin out years later when I was writing an article about directing training in Singapore. I wanted to understand how someone becomes that kind of director. Someone whose work is deeply humane, politically awake, and always in conversation with the community around it. And just as he was then, Alvin was incredibly generous with his time, his thinking, and his experience. Alvin has mentored generations of theater makers, shaped devising practices in Singapore and beyond, and built a body of work that insists theater can be civic, intimate, and rigorously alive all at once. But what I love most about this conversation is that it isn't about legacy or accolades. It's about why he keeps going, how he stays curious, and what it costs and gives to make work in a place that doesn't always make it easy. I'm deeply grateful for this conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you. This is my interview with Alvin Tan. So, Alvin, I sought you out when I was writing this article for Arts Equator about directing. I had been teaching theater making for the 10 years that I was in Singapore inside of an acting program, but I was constantly kind of worried about this lack of young directors coming up in what was becoming a very expensive landscape, very hard landscape to come into. And when I was proposed this article to write, I wanted to start with you because you have influenced generations, multiple generations of theater makers now. And every single one said, oh, you got to start with Alvin, because that's where I started. I learned from him. This is where I got my start. And I'm curious, who shaped you? What values or instincts did you inherit?
Wow. Okay. I think growing up in the kind of Peranakan household, straight-born Chinese, already from young, being told that I'm not Chinese enough because I don't speak the language. I speak Malay at home. That kind of role confusion from young. And then also coming to terms that being gay when I was, I think, primary 5, primary 6, kind of made me grow up faster than my peers. Yeah, because I go into like reflection and thinking without knowing that I was, doing all these things because I was searching a lot of stuff when I was young. And then I think I became an altar boy. Then, of course, very conflicting because I wasn't a born Catholic. Conflicting because I was searching for God and then having crushes on the guys, my friends, who I worship at church with, right? And having to come to terms with that paradox. Gladly I landed with a priest who was my mentor, who was quite open. I grew up on the kind of left wing of the Catholic Church, which Pope Francis previously, the Pope, was from, which is, looking at the social teachings of the church and social justice, which greatly has been suppressed in Singapore since the Operation Spectrum happened in 1987 because of the church involvement. So being more of the left incline, we don't look so much on sexual morality. In fact, looking at social inequalities and all that was more a focus, and Christ being with the outcasts. So those things, it's quite iconoclastic in that sense that it brought me to not go to the usual tropes of what religion is about. Yeah. So just describing that I was brought up in an environment that was questioning critically things and not accepting what is normal so easily. Yeah. And I was very excited about that. And then I became the national president of the national movement, but it was regional and it was also international. Young Christian students, the international is the international movement of Catholic students. Yeah, so that kind social orientation and all that. And then my love for literature, I fell in love with literature at 13 years old. And then at university, I went for the introduction to sociology and fell in love with it. And I was discouraged from taking it because I was applying for a teaching scholarship and sociology was not a teaching subject. So I loved it so much. I chose it over the scholarship. So I didn't get the scholarship and I carried on with literature and sociology, which in combination was very powerful in terms of my formation. And that all entered into my theatre making because at that time there wasn't theatre studies yet.
Right.
Yeah, so this was the environment, and then the literature I was introduced to, D.H. Lawrence, Foster, Beckett. It was all these Virginia Woolf and all these writers that kind of inspired me because they were questioning their society, um, and um, and like D.H. Lawrence and what was the norm, and he was against the aristocracy. He was more for white love, more for a passionate love versus all the cerebral things. So all the writers were questioning writers, and I think first year NUS I was very thrown off because I kind of lost the objectivity of faith, and everything became very relative and subjective and solipsistic. Yeah, so I was a bit thrown off, and then I told myself, no, actually, life is a bit like a buffet. You choose from the buffet, and the plate of food is what you end up with. And then the next round, if you're not happy with that, you make a different permutation. Yeah, so I was growing quite philosophically as well. So all these things, I think, and then of course, then I started doing theatre in the second year NUS because I felt my time was running out and to start a theatre company. And when I was at the university would be the best because I was afraid that once I started working, the world would actually vacuum me in. And when I was in Young Christian students, there was a full-timer who told me, Alvin, if you're going into non-profit, you have to do it early because in Singapore, if you take the normal route, you'll be seduced by the...
You'll never come back. Yeah.
And it's very difficult to get out and feel the pinch of sacrifice. So I said, okay, I have then to actually begin at the university. And that's where I started a necessary stage. And it was quite a blessing in disguise because the putting up productions at campus level brought a lot of audiences because it was free. And then when I transitioned into when I graduated and then started doing it at Shell Theaterette and DBS Auditorium, my peers also graduated and also was working around Shenton Way and also dropped by at our lunchtime performances. Yeah, so our audience kind of grew. And at that time, it was easier because the environment wasn't saturated yet. It was still young and new and fresh, and National Arts Council just started. And then, of course, later I went into IE, training to be a teacher. And at that time was when I took up the director course with Ko Pao Kun. And a lot of his beliefs affirm my beliefs and the intersection of, general ideological beliefs and theatre, the intersection of that. And that was the other impact. So there was not one mentor.
Right.
It was a group of it, with including all the writers. Then I realized that I was very in love with Western classics and all that because it was so mature, right, and stuff like that. Of course, China, India also had, but I wasn't. I was again very Western influenced. So I said the Asia one, I will take care of it when I retire. It was that kind of mindset, yeah. which I'm doing now, Yeah, but at that time it was just the West. But I realized in me, I did not want to, I would be inspired by the work and the classics, but I do not want to put my resources to stage the Western classics. I wanted to do our own original works. Yeah, I wanted to kind of find a parallel equivalent of, analogies, metaphors, voice, and be let myself be open and inspired by the Western classics. And see if I can migrate those interests into doing local original works. So that is roughly the journey, lah.
So, well, from the very beginning, your way of making sense in the world was through theater. Like there wasn't a did the Western works, the canon, and then you started making localized work, political work, social justice work. It was there from the beginning. So, can you talk a little bit about that jump from, I'm supposing, literature to the theater? Because a text-based medium versus a visual medium is not a natural leap for a lot of people. But that's, that your journey seems like it was all lined up for that. But there was at some point when you were like, you've never done a play before, you've never acted or directed, and then that's been your whole career. Thankfully for the rest of us that you did go in that direction. Can you talk about that moment?
Yes, you're right. It's literature, but the for literature we have novels, short stories, and then we have poetry, and we have drama. So drama was the one that attracted me most. I love the others, and I could do the others as well, but drama was the thing that kind of drew me in because I had to interpret. Right? I mean, what you read is. And at that time, I didn't have the language, but I realized later on hindsight that I was interested in the performance context, right? So how do you act the text would then make the work. So I feel that as a reader, I have a way in to contribute to the final product. So reading the text alone wasn't sufficient. It was necessary, but someone has to come in to treat it.
Interpret.
Someone
Yeah.
else has come in to act it. Yeah. Then, a different thing appears from just the text. And then my friend reading the text has a different interpretation from from how I read it. Yeah. So there's all these things that kind of excited me. And when I went into university and we first started, okay, what started in the rehearsal room? I remember when we did Woody Allen's God. He wrote a script. Yeah, it was quite funny. Now I was trying to adapt it, and it was successful. We won the outstanding production award. But I wasn't satisfied with it, and I was wondering why I wasn't satisfied with the project. And I realized I did not. I mean, reflecting honestly, I did not succeed in translating the New York neurosis in Woody Allen's God, even though I adapted it to, the streetwalker was someone from Geylang and all that. I did all the parallel adaptation, but I didn't get the soul of the work. And I was thinking by the time I go into, doing a full adaptation, it would be such an overhaul. I might as well use my resources to create a new work.
Right. Yeah.
So that was when I think I moved from the movement, because the older directors like Max LeBlanc and all that, they were doing a lot, aggressively adapting Western works. Yeah, and then I think it transferred to my generation who just wanted to do original works. And when we started in the rehearsal room, I remember as well having different actors from different ethnic groups. And when I'm the kind of director that I don't like to just have a singular vision of the director directing the play. I wanted input from the actors. So asking people their opinion and their thoughts. And some of them, of course, would fall back to their own ethnic cultures, struggling to translate the text, whether it's Western or local. And some of them can't recall their rituals or the symbols of the rituals completely. So they had to go home and interview their parents or their grandparents. And then they brought it back to the rehearsal room. Then I found that very enticing, very interesting from the Malay home and from the Chinese home. And there was a wealth of offerings coming from all directions, just interpreting one scene. Then that's where I think what started very informally as a devising, because you need to collaborate then, if different cultural impulses are to be brought into composing the work or the scenography, yeah. and how do you do it so that it's fair to all cultures. And I didn't know I was dabbling with the beginnings of interculturalism. Yeah, yeah. So because I was following Pao Kun, was more multicultural. Not following him, actually, I was already interested in our local voice, but Pao Kun reinforced that, right? So looking for that multicultural thing, but then because I'm Peranakan, there's a Malay and Chinese. There's centuries of interaction of different cultures with the Peranakan culture emerging from that hybridity.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know then consciously because I didn't study it yet, but I was doing it more, subconsciously, trying to kind of find the intersection of cultures in a home that had mixed cultures, so was interested in like mixed marriages, Malay marrying Chinese, and how do they negotiate the cultural practices and conflicts and the contestations, and how do they rise above that and things like that. Yeah. So those were the things that I found I had to confront if I were seriously and sincerely investigating doing Singaporean work,
Mm,
right? Because that is Singapore. And if I don't engage with that complexity, then I'll be doing a Singapore work in a very shallow way.
mm.
Yeah. So I'm not sure whether I'm answering your question,
No,
but
yeah, it is. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, like, I moved over from New York, and one of the things that struck me, I landed in January
okay.
of 2010, and I went straight to M1 Fringe, and I got to see, the things that were there that year, and I kept on thinking that in a lot of ways, I'm not sure what all was devised and what everything that I saw in the 10 years when I were there were versus, written by a playwright or written by a company, but there was something about the multiplicity of Singapore in general that led to a lot of devised work. That devising by itself needs the multiplicity of opinion, the multiplicity of culture. A singular vision uh, doesn't drive devising that well. I mean, you
Yes.
certainly can try,
Yeah.
but having that many voices in the room of differing, disparate backgrounds led to some amazing work, some really, really great things, some things that didn't work as great. But
Yeah.
again, coming over there and seeing that like there was just a wide range of things because there are such a wide range of cultures and people there. I was really fascinated by that. But you were starting out TNS. You mentioned, coming straight out of NUS, and Arts Council is just starting up and the landscape is kind of open and free, but you're entering a landscape that's shaped by state structures and censorship. How did you navigate that terrain that early on without losing this social justice compass that is so key to your origin story?
Okay. Very interesting and valid question. Yeah. I guess when we started, it was quite mild. It was Lanterns Never Go Out. It was about a transition of a graduate into the working world. So those things were all right. And then we did other stuff. I think the trouble started when we started doing off center, which was on mental illness. It was commissioned by the Ministry of Health, and they wanted something that was adult, not something prescriptive. That's the brief. Yeah. So they gave us permission. We did the research, and we came out with a play that questioned the social system. And one of the protagonists had a breakdown in the army because we went through the army, and in the army they try to deinstitutionalize you. So doing, they had a lot of ragging, a lot of I mean, today you will see it as bullying. You will ask a recruit to run to the tree and shout "I love you" to the tree, and then your platoon mates will say "We can't hear you," and then you have to keep shouting. So they kind of humiliate you, so you lose your individuality and then become like a mass that will listen to instructions. Yeah. So that's the institution of the army, and it's quite natural that people do break down in the army. Yeah. So we had a scene, and that scene was just us, it's part of the storytelling. But for them, they kind of politicize it. They said the Ministry of Health cannot sponsor or commission a work that criticize another
Right,
Ministry
right.
of Defense. Yeah. So it was quite a narrow way of interpreting. That means you are politicizing my work. I'm not having that intention. Yeah. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff, and a lot of stuff because one protagonist had suicide, the other one actually survived. Actually, we were being very fair in the storytelling. but they would focus on that. They don't want the suicide. So they wanted us to change a couple of stuff. The cast, the director, playwright Haresh and myself, we were so invested in it because we had gone through 1 year of research and devising that we gently told them to take back the money so that we can go on with the original work. And that was interpreted as defiance. Right. So they did a kind of search on us, lah, as in investigation, and they found out that we didn't have any foreign funding because they were curious how could we go on with the work without the 30,000. That time 30,000 was a lot, so they couldn't understand about integrity. They couldn't understand about being principled, and they couldn't understand what passion was about. That passion would be prompt action like that. So they were suspecting that we were manipulated by foreign forces and giving us funds to afford this kind of defiance. And they didn't find anything. So we went on, and then it was Full House because they criticized it. It came out in the media. And
Great
that
advertisement.
it was a Streisand effect. Lah. So it was Full House, and it was critically acclaimed. So ironically, 13 years after that, then Off Center became the first local work to be accepted as an O-level text. So same thing with forum theatre, same thing with a lot of works that were criticized and kind of near censorship, and then years later celebrated. So we kind of able to survive the storm in order to tell the story of success. There was another group called Third Stage, and that was during the Operation Spectrum. They were the leaders were incarcerated.
Can you talk a little bit about Operation Spectrum, because it's an international audience, so I know about it as well, having been there and learned about it. But can you talk just a little bit about that, having kind of survived that time period and what that did for artists or
So
thinkers?
Operation Spectrum was in 1987 when the government, suspected a group of activists, educators, artists, and church people. 22 of them were gathered and detained without trial. So it was political. They were suspected of coming together and conspiring to bring down the state, and masterminded by a person called Vincent Cheng. So I was in Young Christian Students, and my office was next to Vincent Cheng's office, the mastermind. And Vincent Cheng was working for the church. It was called Justice and Peace. Yeah. So, but like I was saying, it was very social teachings of the church. Yeah. So looking at, migrant workers, the maids who ran away, and they had a shelter in Geylang sponsored by the Catholic Church, and pro bono legal advice was given to them. And all this was actually taboo. It wasn't as open as it is today. Yeah. So at that time, it wasn't advisable to do these things, and these things were seen as subversive activities. So there was a theatre group called Third Stage, and two of its leaders were taken in, and that flustered a lot of us, because they were doing political theatre. So at that time, there was actually political theatre in Singapore as a group dedicated to it. And after that, after 1987, which they call Operation Spectrum, you don't have that anymore. You just have one political play here and there. But looking back, I think my analysis was that there was people power happening in Philippines. So all the people power, I think from Brazil and from other parts of the world had, the influences had gone to Philippines. And people power was religion, theatre company PETA, Catholic religion, because they carried the statue of the Virgin Mary down on the road, and people gathered, brought down Marcos, you see, in 1986. And I think because of that, Malaysia and Singapore panicked. Malaysia had Operation Lalang. Malaysia detained 100 people, and Singapore Operation Spectrum detained 22. But of course, history was not taught that way. Even to today, it's not seen that way. So I feel that because the template was the same, was church, intellectuals, academics, and social activists, and theatre group. Uh, that was the template of the conspiracy of people on the ground, yeah, that would destabilize the country, yeah. But later on, we met with the activists in Malaysia. We found out that their detention was in groups, whereas in Singapore, the detention was in isolation, was single, was more severe. Anyway, that was Operation Spectrum. Before that, it was artists were also detained. So it was Ko Pao Kun and the wife. So that was Operation Cold Store, I think. Yeah, so that was the target was communism.
Yeah.
Operation Spectrum, the target was Marxist. Marxist, yeah. And the Marxist residue affected us when we were framed as Marxists after we returned after having done forum theatre workshop with Augusto Ball in New York. Yeah, so we were framed that in 1994. So it's like intervals of every 5 years, there's a hit on the knuckles. And this was a time before social media.
Right.
So once social media came about, I think this was difficult. The conspiracy was difficult to fabricate because the activists were in touch with the mainstream body and could update everyone what they were doing. Operation Spectrum was successful because when the government came out with it in the papers, the population in Singapore, the citizens felt, oh, the government found out something and saved all of us. Yeah, so they didn't believe the activists, they believed the fabrication. But of course now, everything is being questioned lah. And the credibility has been debunked. But now with social media, they can't regulate that way. So it's a different way of regulation in Singapore today. It's more sophisticated.
It's hard to tell what's real at all anymore on social media.
Yeah,
so,
but that's global as well.
Yeah. So these constraints, I mean, they're legitimate constraints and things that could very well turn you off from this. But it can also, as with a lot of artists, kind of inform an aesthetic as well. So there's monetary constraints, there's political and social constraints that you have to deal with. I'm sure there was all kinds of other, space is always an issue in Singapore. So did those constraints become instead of obstructions, kind of become a style for TNS? Did it become something that, like, this thing, I'm not gonna make it an excuse. I'm gonna make it my art instead.
Yeah. You are very sharp. It is a very good question. I very seldom do people ask me like that. I usually provide the appreciation of it, the explanation of it, without being asked. But you phrased it into a question. Yes, it kind of became an aesthetic. It kind of inspired us, and also I think we've looked at a lot of artists in the world, and we do see that like people from Russia and artists operating in more oppressive regimes, and actually it's informed their aesthetics. Yeah. So rightly so, it also went into us questioning, and we realized that along the way, we want to every single play wasn't about anti-establishment. There were plays about dementia. There were plays about, I don't know, helping intergenerational, dealing with old age and all that. So there were plays where National Arts Council and the Necessary Stage could go hand in hand, you know what I mean, without feeling there was a compromise on our integrity. Yeah, so there were projects we did that were in alignment with the government, and it wasn't compromising, in any way. Yeah, so in that sense, our programming was diverse. Yeah, and I think that kind of reduced their paranoia about investing in a group that was totally just oppositional to them all the time. Later on, I developed something analogically is a compass. North being the dominant and the strongest, yeah, and South being the opposition. Yeah, so a lot of artists and activists like the South because South is when you speak truth to power, right?
Yeah.
Now, what I developed was that when I said we can do alternative work and not necessarily oppositional being the only alternative. So why are we not doing work where perspectives can come from east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest? Means tangential positions and perspectives should be included in the work. Now, that's not to say that the South is not included, because then that will be a cowardice kind of escape. So once in a while in the work, the South position voices itself, right? Then after that, it can go into alternative positions and South not being the only alternative. Now, some activists don't like that because they feel it's a dilution. Yeah. But that informed TNS aesthetics, where it's got the multiplicity of or a spectrum of positionalities appear in the work of the storytelling. So that would then be inclusive of a diversity of responses to an issue. Yeah. So so that kind of help as well in composing the work, and it's also interesting in how it encapsulates diversity, because you do have to deal with that. Not We realize it's not just the government, right? Even amongst the plurality of your cultures, yeah, you can be in opposition. You know what I mean? Your liberation theology of the Christian and your fundamentalist Muslim, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Then
Yeah.
how do you coexist, right? So
Right.
this is not even government and subject; they are your siblings, right?
Right.
So it's actually dealing with differences. And if Singapore is multicultural and you want to be intercultural, then you jolly well find a vocabulary that will help you negotiate that. So the thing is that the trouble now, I feel, the world is that we are a product of the success of the left wing. The left wing wants invisible segments and sectors of society to be better represented. So we give them voices, right? And we make them more visible. And so more and more, the world is, the spectrum of diversity is even more. Not that this diversity did not exist before, it did, but it's to push them into the spotlight. So more and more and more and more. But I think the tragedy is that we did not look into developing the capacity or the vocabulary to deal with the differences we are recognizing.
Uh,
And so we further atomize,
right.
self-atomize.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
silo even further.
We
Exactly.
sign up
Yeah.
further. So it's no longer the grand narratives. It has gone into micro narratives of like
Yeah.
feminism. Feminism breaks down to socialist feminism, radical feminism, bourgeois feminism. And that breaks down even more in the LGBT spectrum. What happens is that we can't come together to oppose the patriarchy, because the differences now, we internally bicker among ourselves. Yeah, so that's the tragedy. And the right wing sits down and eats the popcorn and gets entertained by our self-fracturing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so now through my Pranakan projects, I'm trying to find how in the spectrum, the diversity of the Pranakan group, how do we find the Pranakans were known as cultural brokers because we could speak all the different languages. The British liked us and put us at the heads of civil service
Mm,
because we could mediate very
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But how come today we cannot mediate our own differences? Yeah, so that's my mission now and vision, and the tragedy of what is it, because we could shine because we were under the gaze of white British people. And now they are gone. We can't even do it for ourselves. So we should actually be more self-reflexive and gaze upon ourselves, look at our own social cultural history and see how we could facilitate different cultures, and we should actually glean that off and relearn it and apply it to how we can actually facilitate ourselves, our differences. It's a long road. But at least there's a vision to inspire that journey.
Well, that's what I've always appreciated about your work is you talked about the wide gamut of experience that you're putting on stage. I mean, from, senior citizens doing theater to devised work to work with domestic workers to, more politically based plays. Like it's the most human theater. And I don't mean this as a derogatory to the other theaters in Singapore, but it really does feel like it covers the entire human experience of people that I would never meet, people I wouldn't think about making theater. So not only am I the audience member, seeing the full gamut of experience, but also those communities are able to then go and see themselves on stage as well in places where they would normally not be able to do that. And um, is it that I mean, you've mentioned Haresh, your longtime collaborator. Is it that an idea happens? Haresh brings you an idea, and then you collaborate on that idea, devise around that idea. He's written something, he brings it in, you direct that. What is that relationship like of building out these plays? I mean, it's such a wide range of plays and a very long history there. How does it all work? And I'm sure it has changed over the years as well.
Yeah, I guess there's a whole range. Yeah, it's there's no one formula, but I think it's safe to say something that Pakun helped us put into words. He said that when he does a work, it starts from what disturbs him. It's a
Yeah,
disturbance, yeah,
yeah.
and then the whole work is a project investigating that disturbance.
Mm,
So, so I think the unspoken thing is that okay, what's the disturbance of this period? Yeah,
hmm.
and we will discuss it, and then we would then look at the breadth and the depth of what disturbs us about the issue, right? And the different perspectives, and then we find out I've met another practitioner from Thailand as well. So he said it in this way. He said, before I start a project, I hold a meeting and ask people to announce all the problems I would face. Put it on the table because these are the gifts to the project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the
So I
constraints.
love that. Yes,
Yeah.
because I'm doing it without having the words to
Hmm.
describe it. Yeah. So bring all the problems because usually the problems would make people stay away from making it into a project. But I think as an artist, you want the problems because they are the very fodder. And if you engage with it and then you stay with the discomfort of it, that's why we like process work because you need to stay for a longer time until your relationship with it deepens. And the problem with Singapore is that it's so small. In other countries, you have a new work, you have developmental phase, you have development grants and research.
Yeah.
You open as a reading in in New York, which opposite La Mama, that
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
place. Then you tour the work in regional theaters. Then when it's successful, you open the city center venue. In Singapore, when you open in a library in Chai Chi, you
That's
open
it.
regionally, you open nationally.
Yeah.
There is no runway to develop a new work. So we become like disposable culture, right? New work and then throw away, start all over again with another new work because you get disenchanted with the older work. When actually you should improve it, and then
Hmm.
the richness of it will come, right? Like a soup and stock, you brew it over time. So we kind of did it in phase one, phase two, phase three.
Hmm.
So the methodology of nurturing new work also came into our practice. Yeah, so we need time to develop a work rather than create it. Because sometimes you can, because especially your first work, you haven't written anything for and your first work, like this guy just gave me his work. He has spent 3 years writing it, and as a first time playwright, the work is not staged yet. I was very impressed, but he had spent 3 years putting 3 years of his life into the work. Yeah, so that yeah, it might take a shorter time to produce it, but normally there's a lot of investigation, research. You need to then, literature research, you need to look at how much academia has covered that ground as well. And then you need to do your interviews with the actual people, like mental illness, like off center, you see, it wasn't part of the creators' work, right? Even when we were doing works with migrant people, in order to represent them, you need to do your due diligence and be responsible. And it's only ethical that you do your research and know it well enough so that, when you write and you put them on stage, they are well rounded. That's why now I'm so immersed in the Peranakan thing because I know I grew up in a Peranakan household. I know what are the things I want to address, the misogyny in it, the racism in it, the toxicity. But my question is that do I get rid of it all so that it's sanitized and it
Mm,
becomes politically correct and there's no more color in the heritage I carry
right.
forward? What do I keep? What do I innovate and what do I eradicate?
Mm.
my interest now in drawing the wealth from heritage into contemporary theatre, and in so doing, trying to decolonize Singapore theatre.
Mm.
I can't decolonize properly because I'm so steeped in English and Western symbols. But in terms of content and sensibilities, actually, we are now bicultural, right? We have the English, the West, and we have the Southeast Asian. Yeah. So when you stand in that position, actually, you can have your Southeast Asian sensibilities dialogue with the West because it's in you, but you just have to be self-aware.
How long, like typically, how long is your work? How long does it take to get the work up? I mean, it's the thing of I talked about in when I wrote my article of the quality versus the quantity model. Like you can spend 3 years working on a project and it's ready to go, but as you were saying, like once you open, you've opened nationally, and then you can only
Yeah.
play for about 2 weeks in Singapore because then everybody's seen it. So is it a thing where you open, then you keep it in rep and you bring it back another year, you want to work on it?
Yes.
Like what's the timeline of your projects usually?
So different projects have different capacity to resurrect.
Mm,
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Some we would think it's ready and we open, and then when we restage it a few years later, like those who can't teach, those
yeah,
who can't teach. The first one was in Substation, and that was so long ago, and then we wanted to bring it back, and times changed already.
yeah,
We got someone who was on scholarship, who was like internal mole, who gave us more research materials. And so when we did the second staging, it was the base was there, the base storyline, but it was refreshed, very, very, very well refreshed, very thoroughly rejuvenated. Also, interestingly, when we did it in I can't remember, early 90s at Substation, it, the market was not mature yet. So actors were cheap, so to speak, to say it roughly. They were free, or they were, honorarium rates. So we had 14 people. We had four actors playing teachers, and they were real life teachers, improvising, and they ended up acting. And then we had 9 or 12 students. So Substation was very crowded. We had like 15 people. But when we restaged it, everything was more expensive. So we had a smaller cast, and actors playing teachers were also playing the students. Yeah, so we had to be very clever in the entrance and exits, and how some of them rush out and do a quick change, come back as a student, talking to other teachers. Yeah. But that kind of restriction informed the form in which we presented the new work. Yeah, so it was very exciting because we had a second chance of telling a story with new content and new form.
yeah,
Yeah, because responding to the but mostly the work takes about 9 months. Yeah, so the first phase is always about, say, 1 week and that first week is research, field work, rotating of actors playing the roles so that we can see which actor can carry the role in an interesting way, a suitability lah. So it's a bit of an audition. They are in the project already, but
yeah,
it's more auditioning for roles. Yeah. Then there will be some time passing, and then Harish writes the first draft, and the second phase is when it's about 2 weeks, and then we rehearse that script, and we have a reading, and we ask people come and watch and give feedback. And then a few months would pass, and then we'll dismantle the work and recompose it. And then there will be like 4 weeks or 6 weeks rehearsal towards a ticketed opening. But if it's international work, then the duration of the phases will
yeah, of
increase
course. Yeah.
accordingly.
So for international work, you're talking festivals, right? I mean, are you pitching the idea long before you even have the product to show them, or are
Yes.
you working on that and then okay, all right, that's
Yeah.
sure.
But there was one that wasn't a festival. It was just mobile, the first one, and it was Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, and
Hmm.
Singapore.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just that we had funding from Japan
Hmm.
and we had funding from Singapore, and the funding cradled the project and sponsored uh, the practitioners from Thailand and the Philippines because they didn't have the funding. Yeah, And there's the whole complexity of which country funds it and how to
Yeah.
spread out the power so that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not the funded countries that are making the decisions. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
those are the complexities are involved.
So in devising, uncertainty is built into the process. I mean, you might have a generalized idea and you might have a direction that you're going, but it could go in many, many different directions. What's your relationship to uncertainty now versus uncertainty at the beginning when you were starting to devise? Like, is it
Yeah,
is it still as strange and every single time you're remaking the wheel, or have you
yeah.
gotten into a
I think
formula?
in the past I was nervous and very anxious about the uncertainty, to be honest. But later on, as I was saying that I fall in love more with problems. Uh yeah, the uncertainty became actually quite addictive. You're looking at it, you're finding it actually, you're searching for it. I realized that because we're doing social theatre, right? Earlier part, the tendency was to prescribe an alternative utopia. Yeah. That was before I went away to study to do my master's. And there was a problem when, in a way, when we did off center, a lecturer of mine, a sociology lecturer, said, yeah, it's all well and good, very good piece and all that, but you're still reacting to the government, the state. So in that way, the state is still prescribing how you create your art. You need to do an alternative work that is not responding to that which you are dismantling or you are deconstructing. It's alternative, not reacting. Yeah, so with that, I went to do my master's. And my master's was a research into Carol Churchill and Worcester Group because Singapore is Anglo-American, but also because I had British Council Fellowship and I had a Fulbright money. Yeah, so I used that opportunity to study two women. One was socialist feminist, one is bourgeois feminist, and their styles of collaborating and devising. And both of them were engaged with social teams. Yeah, and I noticed when they work, they were very rooted in the social issues, but at the end, they were able to leave the work open.
Uh,
It was the men who were doing social plays, the British writers that were prescriptive in
uh-huh.
terms, they hide it behind metaphor, allegory, and stuff like that, in order not to come across as didactic. But the feminist impulse was to it's more humble. Carol Churchill. She said, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life or that I have a message. I'm here just to share with you what I observe."
Uh-huh.
So it's very, wow, it's so, wow, it hit me very profoundly. So I look at it in Cloud Nine, because Cloud Nine, you're
Yeah.
familiar with it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first part is all the British colony in the Victorian thing, right? In Africa or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Then the second part is 25 years later in
Yeah.
Britain,
Yeah.
1980. Yeah, but the magic thing is that she just aged her characters 10 years. Yeah. And there was the patriarchy in the Victorian family, but in I think the daughter was a doll, a rag doll. The gender was all opposite, and then there was a suppressed gay son. And then in 1980s London, the gay son grew up to be a full-fledged gay person. Yeah, and in gay-friendly London, I mean, yeah, but even then, the adult son got involved in a relationship, and the lover wanted a open relationship, and the son wanted a kind of dedicated, a close relationship. And then the wife, the sister, was married to a husband that was very feminist and encouraged her to go to Manchester. She went to Manchester with her child, met another woman in the park, and went into a lesbian relationship. Yeah. So, but in one interview, Carol Churchill said this: "Today's solution becomes tomorrow's problems."
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that line because,
Yeah.
look, I can't give you a solution because the solution in it are the seeds of new problems. So, there was something against absolutism. So, if you're talking about uncertainty, that was when I fell in love with uncertainty and ambiguity. Yeah. So the ambiguity, the ambivalence, the multiple perspective that the world is not stable. And so what entered my world of composition and aesthetics is things like provisional, things that is transitional, things that are processual, and things that are fluid, which is all about what we are today. And then I met a lesbian Marxist from California. Is it Sue Ellen Case? I don't know whether you know her. She's an academic practitioner as well. So she was invited to NUS Theatre Studies. I met her. We became very good friends in very quickly. So she said there was a woman, another academic, who wrote a seminal essay called like Unmark to hope for my students. So Unmark means like, okay, don't use labels. Peggy Phelan, she was anti-label. So like, so don't call yourself gay. Just, just live your life. Yeah. So this Sue Ellen case was a bit outraged about it. She said, you might as well then remain in the closet. Now, there is no shortcut. What you need to do is to mark, unmark, mark, unmark, mark, unmark. And
Yeah.
then I understood her because like in the beginning, you the feminist first wave, you burn bra. It's very different. And later you kind of refine it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So being gay, so you want an identity.
Yeah.
But after that identity that you articulate will hold you ransom.
Right.
And then you feel claustrophobic and you want new descriptions. Then you have to unmark and remark. Yeah. So that was the thing that again inspired me and added to my vision. So that I hope will answer your question again about uncertainty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uncertainty is part of the terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of not, then we are fixed and
Right.
we are determinate, and that's not what art is about.
And we contain multitudes, so why just
Yes.
allow yourself to be defined by one thing, even if you were doing the defining? To that defining thing, Anne Bogart talks about being a satellite dish for the actor, being that first audience, but also being, asking herself, a director asking, what do I need to be for this actor right now? What do they need to hear? What do they need to kind of what do I need to reflect back to them? Who do you need to become in the rehearsal room for your collaborators?
Gosh, it's very tiring. It's very exhausting because you have to be different kind of director to a different cast member. Yeah, because they all have different needs and different processes and different approaches. So you have to kind of what I would call from my teaching practice, you have to individualize your yeah, So like nowadays it becomes even sharper, like what do I give as a group feedback? And then what do I do? Who can I only do individualized feedback?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So I WhatsApp the person or I talk to the person alone away from the rest because it might hurt the ego or it might be humiliating. Uh and it doesn't work lah if you just want to democratize everything. Yeah. So you do need to actually look at individual sensitivities. Culturally also is different. You look we did a Zoom play during COVID. So we had two Americans, one Malaysian, two Singaporeans.
I
With
watched it.
the
I remember it.
yeah. So we had certain issues in the process, yeah, because the white actor had triggered in one of the improvs, and there was I felt a pressure to stop the rehearsal and all sit down in the Zoom room and let's talk about it. Because if you don't do that, then you will be deemed as a director that doesn't care. I had to tell them that in Singapore, normally the actor would say, okay, I got triggered. I need to be excused. Let me settle. And then when I'm settled, I'll come back in. If not, if I can't settle on time, at the end of rehearsal, I have a chat with the director and we'll see how I carry on. But please do not stop the rehearsal on my account. So that's the morality, right? And that's the threshold of safety for us. But when we work with Americans, then suddenly, so why are we colonizing ourselves and bending towards American way of care that is superior to ours? Yeah. Ours, the Asian were like, please do not sit down and talk about my issue. I don't want it's a private thing.
Exactly.
I don't want their attention.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying which one is correct or which one is superior. It's just different, right?
Yeah.
So it's not Adam, it's not just one actor to another, right?
Yeah.
It's one culture with another culture where you're doing collaborative devising work at a international or regional level. Yeah. So we need to sharpen that because if you are dealing with, like I say, if you're dealing with difference in a deep way and meaningful way in your process and in your subject and content of your work, then you can't escape it. You have to look at diversity, difference, and just learn and get on with the program. Yeah. How to deal with it. Even even now, the different generations,
Yeah.
it's the alpha, the millennial. It's oh my god, it's so difficult, and because the younger ones are more precocious and they've learned the woke language. Now, I am for woke, I am, but the thing is that I think woke can also be abused because
It's also a mark. It's
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I encountered three youth that I was mentoring, right? So Yeknia and Yan Ying were the two women, and then there was another boy. Now, this boy was prescribing to me how to give feedback to his work. You know, the sandwich one, say something affirming. That
Yes.
is, yeah, he was giving me a lecture on how, because he was so afraid to get hurt.
Uh,
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I went through it with him. But later on, I was saying, what the hell? Because Yang Ying and Yagnia, they know about this. They're not as young as this guy, but
yeah.
they say, Alvin, instead of trying to find the right way and walking around gingerly around me, I rather spend the time looking at what are the weaknesses and then improve the work. I rather do that. Yeah. So I rather then mentor this two than this boy who I was thinking you might be treated like that at home where your
Uh-huh.
parents for your parents, you can do no wrong. Right? So it's kind of bourgeois and privileged upbringing. I am your mentor, not your parent or not your mother. Yeah. So this person has conflated woke language with entitlement. So if I give in to you, how you want to be mentored, I am further enabling
Right.
that which I want to break down. So now I screen people that I'm mentoring.
Uh-huh.
Because you know what I mean? Yeah, my energies need to go to the people with the values that I am in alignment with. Yeah.
Well, there's a fortitude that's needed for this work, and there's a difference between safety and comfort. And
Yes.
comfort is not a guarantee in the theater, nor should it be. The audience shouldn't be comfortable. The actors shouldn't be comfortable.
Exactly.
We cannot make work in that way, but there is
Yeah.
safety. There's always safety built
Yes.
into that. But
Yeah.
you don't grow as an artist without the rough edges. We're trying to, sharpen a blade, and it does require some pushback. So I'm glad that you do
Yeah.
screen that
So
out.
with all the rise of the trigger warnings at one
Uh-huh.
time, Harish was remarking, but what do we do? Our business is to trigger.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, anyway, that is still being dealt with. Like, I think there's some backlash as well about I saw American talk show. They were talking about gentle parenting, where American parents some cases where American parents have to accompany their children for job interviews.
No, no. Those are the kids you see at brunch every Sunday that are running around the restaurant. Those that
Yeah. Yeah. So
God, gentle
until you
parenting.
reach that point where there's some self reflexivity on it,
Yeah.
the whole because more and more students, more and more youth in Singapore are in American institutions,
Mm,
so they bring back this thinking, lock, stock, and barrel, and they apply it. Like white privilege, and they
mhm.
brought it back and they talk about Chinese privilege. Now, I'm not denying there is Chinese privilege,
Sure.
but they had a forum a few years ago by a Chinese newspaper, Liang He Xiao Pao. And the Chinese educated Chinese were persecuted in the past. Nanta, the university, was closed down by Lee Kuan Yew because he didn't want the Chinese supremacy operating in Singapore. So the Chinese educated Chinese always felt inferior to the English educated Chinese in Singapore. So during the forum, the Chinese educated Chinese said, you remember that era where we were persecuted. Until today, we hold the wound and the trauma and the hurt. What are you talking about Chinese privilege? And the conversation died. So you can discuss Chinese privilege, bringing across from the West white privilege, but you have to adapt it to your own social cultural history.
Right.
or
Right,
not,
right,
it
right.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because overseas, there's bloodshed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But down here, we don't have. It's more metaphorical and psychological violence,
Yeah.
perhaps, not actual bloodshed. Yeah. So I guess it's the context, like if you're talking about difference, things don't travel lock, stock, and barrel. You have to unpack it and reapply. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are mentoring young theater makers. Thank you for that. I'm so glad that you are doing that. What do you wish someone had told you when you were first starting out that now you have the opportunity to speak to young theater makers? What are you telling them? A young director coming up in Singapore. What do you wish that you had heard that you now get to tell them?
I always like to tell them I'm teaching you passionately
Hmm.
about my experience and what worked for me. But it's take it all in context because of my era and things available to me, that certain things work and work for our audience and stuff like that. You take away whatever works for you and you piece it together in the way that it will serve your voice. So you don't take what I teach you religiously. Never do that. And you should have multiple mentors, not
Hmm.
just one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not really that kind of guru mentality, you follow one mentor all your life and stuff like that. So open yourself up, expose yourself to different influences, especially if you're interested in interculturalism. And the other thing is I hasten the Oedipal thing lah. So I teach you, but you kill the father quickly and then
Yeah.
find your, yeah, because it's inevitable. You will
Hmm.
reach there
Yeah.
and you should. And don't worry, I won't feel betrayed.
We'll be friends and colleagues now, and
Yeah, yeah.
the
And
relationship
I will
changes.
then end up learning from you. Yeah, yeah. So it never ends. It should be a healthy cycle.
Well, this question, this as we get to the end of the podcast here, I always end the podcast with these two questions, and this question comes from one of my students who asked me this question and floored me with this question because it was so it threw me for a loop. So I'm learning from her. What's a show that changed how you make work? Changed you. So there was Alvin before you saw the show, and then Alvin after you saw the show.
Wow. Okay. There are definitely. Now I just caught me, yeah, by surprise. No, there's one called Last Exit to Brooklyn. There was a gang rape in the scene and it was devastating to watch. And I remember coming out of the theater and I had to sit down to kind of recompose, yeah, because it kind of shook me quite a bit. I think it was the oppression, and there was the protagonist, the woman who was, yeah, she wasn't giving in, but she was punished in the end, being gang rape in a garage, in abandoned car park, and the storytelling did not redeem her in any way. Yeah, it was very dark. Yeah. Yeah. So it was, and he left it at that. So it was very disturbing in itself. You know what I mean? Because she was resisting, because she was a streetwalker and stuff like that. And I think, of course, then there was that, oh, you took it upon yourself, you asked for it kind of thing. It's like putting, you want to minimize and diminish the oppressor on
Hmm.
stage. You want to bring poetic justice. But
Hmm.
this was opposite. They put up the oppressor, the oppression, and they scaffolded it properly and dedicated the work towards the success of the oppression and the oppressing society, so much so that you will feel the injustice and you want a different outcome,
Mm,
but you're not going to get it. So
mm.
it was very clever. It was unexpected.
I used to work with a Greek guy. I'm obsessed with audience and the interaction between the audience and the stage. And I've been talking to him and saying, I don't really like this word audience. It has the etymological origins of being about hearing, it's all about audio. And I was like, spectators, another thing, and it's all about eyes, theatron, this seeing space. And he said, well, actually, and I said, I want something that's like a witness. I'm looking for a witness. And he's like, well, actually, etymologically in Greek, the word witness comes from
Yes.
martyros, where we get the word martyr. And
Okay.
before Christianity and Islam took martyrdom to new levels, A martyr in Greek society was somebody that saw an accident on the road and was called to
Ah,
court to come and give witness to something.
I
And I was like,
see.
yes, that's what I want. I want my audience to be martyrous. I want them to feel culpability in the act. So what you're
Yes.
describing there
Yes.
is
Yes. Yes. Yes.
is
Yes.
I'm not watching that. I'm feeling that. I'm culpable in this gang rape that is happening on
Yes.
stage that I am
Yes.
allowing to continue to happen, which is what we do in our daily life is we allow these things to go on if we don't speak up about them. That's beautiful.
Thank you for this. We're on the same page
Yeah.
because I'm not quite in agreement with some of the social plays that are
Mm.
being done by some groups. Because what happened is they very conveniently blame the state and the government. Yeah. So and the play is applauded because the audience feel, oh, you're so brave and bold. And you speak on our behalf against the government, and I applaud you. And then the theater company applauds the audience for sponsoring and coming and patronizing a play that, speak truth to power. Now, the thing is that the company and the audience gets away scot-free. So the work that we do will always implicate the audience. And it will, in the end, disturb the audience because the audience have to ask, how did I contribute to this tragedy that I'm
Yeah.
watching?
Yeah.
Yeah. So correct. It's the same. It's just that I didn't know about the Greek thing. And the witness, I think if I'm not wrong, I think Grotowski continued it.
Yes.
Because when he did, he didn't want it to be a theater spectacle. He just wanted people to witness actors training.
Yeah.
Uh, and then somehow be engaged with that. They didn't want to create it so that it could be consumed. And once that happens, it becomes commodified. And it's true, your mainstream commercial theater does that. And you can't disturb your audience because if they get too disturbed, they will be uncomfortable and they will complain about paying the ticket price.
Yeah. And they won't come
So,
back and they won't support it. They won't put it on social media. They won't tag you. Yeah.
yeah. So when you're composing, you are actually subconsciously already self-censoring. You might say, oh, this is too disturbing for the audience. Let's not go there. Yeah. So it's true. The work has to always reach a point. We did one called, what you call it? Underclass. Yeah. It started with a woman selling tissues to the audience coming in. Yeah. We did a lot of research and it's about the poor and how the poor has a lot of services provided to them, but very difficult to access the state money. So she she had a stroke, and then the charity people told her, "You have an estranged daughter. You have to make up with her because she can support you." Yeah, but she doesn't want to do that. Then she had a second stroke, and then she cannot work anymore. And then when she went to get financial aid, and they told her, you have a flat and you have an extra room, you're supposed to rent it out. So you need to monetize all the assets you have before you can actually have access to state funding. So you are then become the real poor instead of the poor that actually still have assets. So she ends up scavenging, taking food from the dustbin because she has no work. So it was told very responsibly and very totally. So by the end, she was cutting away cardboard boxes, and she asked the audience that she got a letter from the government and it's in English. Can they read it to her?
Mm.
Because she can read English, yeah. And
Mm.
then the audience read it to her, and it's to actually get more money, but very complex bureaucratic things here. And a lot of audience were saying they were, and then she carried on packing the cardboard boxes. And there were nights where people came out and helped her. And
I
there were
love
people
that.
who complained to us after that. They say, I wanted to go up, but I couldn't make myself go up. And there were actors who said, I couldn't write Alvin because if I go up, people would think it's a performance because they know me as an actor.
Yeah,
So there
that's
were
true.
all kinds of confessions of guilt. We kind of prefer that kind of work.
Same. Yeah.
Make them think a little bit more that after the lights go down, they are not just talking about the costumes and the lighting design,
Yeah.
but also the issue of the work. Yeah.
I love that. God, I love that. Um, as a kind of a closing question, this is a kind of a gimme kind of freebie, but who are the directors that you are excited about right now? And this is a kind of a cheap way of asking who should I have on the podcast coming up, but who excites you as a director now?
Really, now, okay, because Pakun has passed away. So actually now, okay, I'm shy about this, but I do look forward to what Yeknia is thinking, uh, and and what she does. Yeah, like now she's very disturbed about things in Gaza,
In
and
Gaza, yeah.
I can't do work. How do I do art?
Yeah.
You know, Gaza is happening here. So she's made contact with people in Gaza, talked to them. She's gone a step further, right? And she's a bit of a late bloomer, but she took a detour because she went to Japan to teach. But she grew up in Germany. Because her father was teaching there. So actually, when I started working with her, she came already.
You're right.
I was like, "Where have you been?" Yeah. So it was great, when I talked to her and when I work with her so as well, I can go very far with my ideas because she would not throw it away out of fear or that it cannot be is out beyond her reach. She is adventurous and she would explore and I like her way of thinking and the way she directs and writes and how she's not satisfied with her work and how she tells me she needs a longer runway and she cannot do like Singaporeans do and keep producing in order to be visible. She would rather work on it quietly and grow the work than be held ransom by the anxiety caused by Singapore's environment. So every time when she comes up with an idea and the work that she's working on, even it's not on stage and not ready, I'm already excited about her process and her thinking of it. Yeah, yeah. So I think she's now working with a dance company, Baskas, a traditional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, her work is coming out. A small one part of the dance is coming out soon. I already got the tickets, so I'm looking forward to seeing how she works with the traditional dance company. Yeah, and she herself has gone into dance training as well. Yeah, yeah. So she puts herself through, and she becomes the receptacle,
Uh-huh.
receiving, and then it processes through her, and then the work comes out of that. Is kind of not a kind of factory assembling
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of look forward to her work, although it's so hard to say because I work with her.
Right. It's a little biased, but it's okay. I am as well. Yeah. Alvin, thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your disturbed question, whatever it is that keeps you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and keeps you working. I appreciate it so much.
No, thank you for this.
Everybody's going to enjoy this conversation because you're doing God's work in some way, shape, or form. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
If this episode gave you any insight, inspiration, or even just made you smile, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts for more conversations like this. And if you're looking for guidance with a creative challenge or want to advance a dream of your own, we'd love to help. Visit boardofdirectors.world. The Board of Directors is a global constellation of theater directors dedicated to building community, sharing knowledge, and transforming the role of the director in the 21st century. We convene and curate a fellowship that fosters mentorship, artistic inquiry, and collective care, transcending borders and institutions and traditions. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of each other.